A good protagonist is known to be the perfect slate for a narrative, one that adjusts and reflects the core principles of a piece of art without compromising its ideals, pacing, and morals. Today, I want to discuss how the Traveler plays into that very concept, and why they are the perfect representation of all 7 ideals in the current Teyvat. The Traveler is an enigma, that much we know when considering his tale. We know that he is able to control the elements without the need of a vision, and we know that according to the Inazuman tales, a vision is the embodiment of one's ambition. A vision is a sign of power rather than its source, which is an admirable truth. This video for today is just a little afterthought for a bit, just someone that's currently musing on something that's been eating on her mind. I want to indulge myself in some observations for today rather than relying on a theory centered around established lore. Consider this video as more of a literary examination rather than an objective criticism. There are no right or wrongs for this one, it's just something that I wanted to do. This thought came as an interesting note when I read the comment about how Aether had an eternity worth of wisdom ahead of him, and that immediately got me to thinking about the different ideals of the gods. How I got into that rabbit hole, I will never know. Namely, the ideals of the 7 archons of Teyvat. Today, we will be taking a dive into Aether and Lumine's characterizations and why they are the manifested representations of the 7 ideals of the current Teyvat. Just like my previous Traveler videos, I will be referring to Aether as the Traveler and Lumine as the Abyss sibling. No reason in particular, it's just that I use Aether in my game. I will also be referring to Paimon in this video as an extension and complementary personality to Aether because their dynamic does bring to light their interactions with Teyvat, but this video will be MC centered. Let's begin with the city of freedom, Mondstadt. Freedom is the power or right to act, speak, and think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. We can observe this from its citizens in the playable characters that hail from Mondstadt. Though most of the Mondstadt characters still present themselves with poise and tact, they are usually portrayed in much more festive and lighter scenarios such as the events of 1.4 and 1.6. The Traveler embodies freedom to a great extent. He is a traveler, one that, though adapts and learns the customs of the nations they're visiting, still retains a form of freedom that is unparalleled by any other character. He has no real obligations to the world around him, and as seen in 1.4's Archon Quest, is capable of leaving if so desired. We also see in his mannerisms that he and Paimon are open about their opinions when chastising other characters. As seen in 1.5 where Paimon criticized Zhongli's decision of keeping the contract, the story quest in Liyue where the Traveler is not against acting as they deem fit even in the presence of the Adepti such as Cloud Retainer, the Inazuma story quest where they openly state their disgust for the Vision Hunt decree after seeing what happens when you take away the visions from people, and so much more. There are a lot of instances when Aether speaks his mind both positively and negatively, which means that his exercise of freedom is extensive. Freedom is also a great motif in his gameplay. He can control all 7 elements without the need of a vision. He has quick access to teleportation to and from domains and waypoints. He is free to roam Teyvat unrestrained by the night cycles or any other inconveniences that would be posed to a regular person. Another interesting and maybe unrelated note is that Aether has the freedom to lie. This is just an afterthought, but because he's an unknown figure in Teyvat, a subtle yet telling part of his character is that he lies. He lies about his name, which is why we can change it frequently in-game. At first we thought that Aether and Lumine aren't actually their names, and more of placeholders for promotional material, like Frisk and Undertale. But we know that isn't the case. Aether and Lumine are canonically what their real names are, as said by the Abyss sibling. Also, we lie about our age, making passes to others that we aren't legally allowed to drink or we just don't prefer drinking alcohol. Which is interesting, I suppose. Aether is the embodiment of a free spirit, one that even Venti couldn't replicate because of his status as an Archon. Venti still does have his responsibilities despite being retired, as seen with the Dvalin situation. The next trait might actually seem contradictory to what the Anemo Archon stands for: contracts, or at least the prospect of obligations, promises, commitments, and responsibilities. Contrary to popular belief, I don't think that contract and freedom are different from each other. The Geo Archon's ideals could definitely have been something more grounded like the other things I've mentioned, but no, it's contracts, specifically contracts. And usually, contracts are signed with the freedom of consent and knowledge. You can't force a person into signing a contract, even through using heinous ways like tortures and blackmail. The very idea of contracts that Zhongli stands for is that both parties are consenting. A person always has a choice. Characters in Liyue embody this trait a lot. A lot of them, despite having laid-back personalities, tend to have obligations to their heritage, culture, status, and even actual legal contracts. While Mondstadt's characters often show themselves to have initiative in their stories, Liyuan characters have more reasons to preserve a legacy. So let's look at the Traveler. In lore, we know that the Traveler is someone that does not fall back on his promises when he makes them. There are times when he doesn't outright promise a service to others, but Aether is a man of his word through and through. We know this because of the way he promises to others that he will do everything in his power to help, and help he does, from story quests to commissions to world quests. And he follows up on his promises even through discomfort, like when babysitting Tusser. Aether is also a man of strict responsibilities. While we do make jokes that he's going through several festivals and making houses, we cannot deny that his goal is still unchanging despite everything. We know that he is still pursuing the 7 elements. If we consider the gameplay element of this trait, his companions are the first thing that comes to mind. The characters in our party do take time out of their day to accompany us, meaning that we are bound by a relational contract with them in which they stay with us for a time with varying reasons. The next trait is eternity. The Raiden Shogun's concept of eternity is ever-present stagnation. The characters of Inazuma, unlike the previous 2 nations, embody the opposite of this trait. Their motifs in terms of abilities tend to revolve around either moments in time of change, such as Kazuha's autumn leaves and Ayaka's winter and spring pattern signifying the change of seasons, or fleeting moments of joy that cannot stay forever, like Yoimiya's fireworks. A fascinating example of this too is if Baal and Sarah are playable characters, that too will embody a change in time which fits perfectly with the concept that nothing is eternal, even ideals. Now, in terms of the Traveler, there are actually 2 ways I can see the idea of eternity being embodied in his actions. His representation isn't necessarily that eternity exists as a sole form of stagnation in the world, but rather that the only thing eternal is change. He is the perfect embodiment of that. Aether and Lumine used to live an eternal lifestyle of traveling until he was stopped by the sustainer of heavenly principles. Aether is an immortal being who doesn't age. Aether also has the power to bypass centuries-old constants in Teyvat without repercussion, such as taking an element without a vision and using ancient relics such as teleporter. Aether also has the power to bypass centuries-old constants in Teyvat without repercussion, such as taking an element without a vision and using ancient relics such as teleporters. Another correlation of eternity in Aether is from a dialogue in Zhongli's story quest where it hints that Aether will eventually outlast Zhongli. The line states the following: "Stone carvings were one such ancient methods, but unchanging stone, immovable earth, even one such as myself. Someday we might all disappear. You are one who crosses the celestial atlas, and who passes countless worlds. If our history is engraved in your memory, it will one day accompany you to another world." This means that Aether has an impeccable narrative of the worlds that he has visited, and has been trusted by Zhongli to preserve the memory of Teyvat even when the waters of time have flown. The concept of Aether's longevity plays into the next ideal: wisdom. The nation of Sumeru is known for its academia, and extensive use of scholastic knowledge for the sake of combating ignorance. Aether embodies the ideal of not only Sumeru's knowledge, but also, as Lisa puts it, uninhibited erudition. Let's begin with wisdom. Aether has several centuries of wisdom ahead of him. Despite not being a native to the world he visits, it should still be noted that he himself is a streetwise person. He has great insight when it comes to detecting bad intentions from a person, and does take into account practicing caution around them to some degree. The only exception to this was a time where he couldn't really pinpoint Scaramouche's malintention, but in all honesty, he had no real reason to doubt Scaramouche. That's because Aether does give people the benefit of the doubt, but he never dismisses shady behavior. A good example of this was with Star's Thatcher and Tartaglia. Though a lot of his actions do seem reckless, we shouldn't ignore that there are lines he doesn't cross when he knows that it isn't worth it. There is a reason to his behavior. For example, he already picked up social cues from some of his peers when they need help despite not outright saying it. He also knows when not to anger divinity and when to outweigh in his options, such as how he was hesitant to join the resistance because that meant fighting a literal god. And he also does display a very great combat initiative when it comes to fighting. Wisdom is not the same as historical knowledge or intelligence, but rather the application of one's perception and insight. But let's talk about the other parts of Sumeru's ideals that reflect Aether's curious personality quite well. Uninhibited erudition. Erudition refers to the quality of having or showing great knowledge or learning, and uninhibited means unrestrained expression. Aether is known to be a very curious individual, and a lot of people in Teyvat can regard him as being eager. A good example of this was when he helped Albedo under the benefits of understanding a bit more about himself and how his body reacts to Teyvat. Aether has also expressed to Dainsleif that he has read about Conria. Aether is an adventurer who seeks out dangers if it means reward in either knowledge or material. He also partakes in a lot of festivals and cultural events to showcase Teyvat's history, which helps him understand the world around him. I just think it's a great reflection of Aether's position as the media for players to learn Teyvat around them, since he himself is fairly new to how Teyvat works. The next two traits are something that's more developmental as the story progresses, and something that's telling when it comes to Aether's personality: justice and war. Fontaine and Natlin's traits, when put through the perspective of Aether, seem to be a causation, where one is indicative of his unmoving moral stance on matters, and the other is his actions towards those very morals. Those morals being that he does not want to see people around him suffering and hurting. Aether is very empathetic in nature, and perhaps this is a characteristic that was cultivated over his years in traveling. He's also had to meet different people and is often talking with others when adventuring. We see in his conversations with other characters that he is quick to feel for others and is a good listener to their problems. His sense of justice is very endearing, but is presented in a way that is not unrealistic. We know that Aether's true benevolence mustn't be put out of question, especially since he was quite hesitant to help the Inazuman revolution with the Vision Hunt decree. However, we see as time progresses that his empathetic nature carries through, and he vouches that he will save and avenge those who have fallen because of the cruelty of the Raiden Shogun's decree. He asks for nothing in return, but still helps them when prompted to or asked for. But we have to remember that he still wanted to help those that were in peril because of these events, regardless of his sister. Asking for a reward isn't necessarily a folly to one's sense of justice, especially when the poor guy just wanted missing person posters on the wall for fighting a literal god. But even if a person has a sense of justice, that doesn't mean they'll act on it. Aether is the embodiment of war, or rather, the prospect of war and conflict. War in this context shouldn't be seen like the Archon War, but rather in the context of taking action against another being, concept, or idea. His experience in other worlds should be indicative of just how much combat experience he potentially has. We also see from his travels that he often finds himself in conflict with others, from the Fatui Harbingers to the Abyss to the monsters of Teyvat to just a myriad of problems that weren't even his problems in the first place. Aether is a man of action, constantly involving himself every day in helping others. War and justice can also play a large role in his conflict with his story. Once the journey is over, would he be willing to stand by and watch her destroy the world if it meant staying by her side? Or would he take his blade and fight for the sake of the people of Teyvat? That brings us to the last point: love. Love is a powerful force. Love is one of the biggest driving factors in Genshin's story that doesn't get a lot of attention. Love can bring people to the highest of skies or the lowest of hells. Love is what could bring a person to throw everything away for someone. Love in Aether is shown best through his entire adventures. He loves what he does. He loves traveling and being an adventurer. He loves those he calls companions every day and goes through extensive lengths to keep them powerful and trained. He loves those who he meets in new towns and visits in old ones. He loves the culture, the history, the story that the world has to offer. He loves Teyvat for accepting him so earnestly and kindly despite being an outsider. But nothing beats his love for his sister. A sister that was separated from him upon his arrival. A sister that has not shown herself despite his numerous fights against the Abyss. A sister who has willingly abandoned him on his journey through a foreign land. A sister who has raised her sword against those who Aether considers friends. But despite everything, he pushes on. He goes to Inazuma. He fights the Fatui in the Abyss. He dedicates himself to understanding what she went through. Because that's just what love does to people. The question is, when all is said and done, when he does finish his journey, will he still have any love left in him? Damn, Aster back at it again with the Aether videos. Sheesh! Hey, I just really like Aether. I don't think I've ever enjoyed a main character this much in the past, and I've played a lot of RPGs. But yeah, this is a fascinating thought experiment that I was humoring yesterday while reading lore, and honestly, I like it. It may not be a grounded theory, but it's a nice read. Also, thank you so much for 1,000 plus of all of you. I have no idea how there are so many of you guys, but reading your comments every day is exuberating and definitely keeps me going. I'm glad to have so many perspectives on my theories, both against and for, because I think good qualitative research needs multiple opinions. I'm so excited for the future of this channel, and I hope I can keep posting as regularly as I do. If you like this content, I'm just waiting on my community tab for YouTube to exist so I can start spamming random thoughts and stuff like that, because that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to even start this channel, just having a medium for me to just pour out my thoughts in random places and like editor stuff. I'm also planning on streaming on Twitch, so if you want to discuss lore with me in real time, I would just love to chill there while making future videos. I stream irregularly, and I haven't really tried the platform yet for that channel besides one test stream, so I hope to see you in the future. Other than that, thank you so much for leaving comments, thank you so much for leaving very long paragraphs, because I absolutely love reading comments, you have to understand. But yeah. Thank you so much for chilling with me, and I hope you embark with me on this journey. This is my 3rd Aether video. Oh my god. But yeah, my name is Aster, and thanks for chilling with me.